Hi, I'm Spencer Christian. On this episode of Tracks Ahead, we'll look at New York's impressive Hellgate Bridge, visit a father and son whose passion is collecting vintage Lionel trains, and we'll explore the fabulous Taieri Gorge in southern New Zealand. But first, most of us at some point in our lives wanted to run away and join the circus. Well, the circus travels by train, so what better way to explore the big top than by rail?
It is called the greatest show on earth. When you say circus, this is what most folks picture. The Ringling brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus delights fans who are young at heart and just plain young.
We are currently performing in our third century in the United States. We started in the 1800s, performed through all the 1900s, and now it's the year 2000. And that's quite remarkable in itself. There's a lot of businesses that wish that they had the kind of success where they could be in business for 130 years.
In an age where kids turn to the TV or computer for fun, this kind of classic entertainment still packs them in. And this, all of this, still gets from place to place in classic fashion.
Well, it's more economical to move it by rail. You know, the fleet of trucks that we would need to move this show would be astronomical. We have 42 wagons on each unit right now, as well as our animals, as well as our performers. And it's just not even close economically to transport this by truck.
The train makes getting into and out of cities and towns a swift operation.
We can unload the train in 2 to 3 hours and have everything transported from the rail yard to the arena that we'll be performing in.
When the greatest show on earth is over in one town, a teardown begins with almost military precision.
When the show is over, even during the last show, we begin the loading operation. We begin loading the wagons. Everything with the show goes into an individual wagon. The wagons are numbered, and it would be specifically for rubber or for electrical. It could be for props, it could be for wardrobe. Every wagon has a specific item that gets loaded into it. Those wagons are then transported to the train, where we have 16 flat cars and one bi-level car that we load, and takes us approximately 4 to 5 hours to load the train. Once everything is loaded and properly secured and the ramps are put away, then we're ready to depart to the next city.
Yeah, you can go ahead and turn that. I'm going to have them dump them on the other end. If you look at the whole evolution of the piggyback loading in the railroad yards, that whole industry grew out of circus loadings, and we're still doing it the old-fashioned way.
These aren't just ordinary trains painted up in circus colors. Ringling Brothers crafts them for the specific needs of the operation.
We're in Palmetto, Florida right now at our railcar recycling operations. And we opened in September of 1992. And what we do basically is we take older rail cars, whether they're purchased from Amtrak or other railroad companies, or whether they come out of our own fleet, and we strip them down to the bare raw metal and rebuild them totally from top to bottom, from the trucks to the car bodies to the interiors.
There are 8 different kinds of accommodations, different versions for different members of the team.
They're more or less assigned by the position that someone has on the show. A dancer will have a different size room than the performance director, and the performance director will have a different size room than the general manager, and so on. This is one of our larger type rooms here. This has a full-size bed with a twin bed up top, and the dinette area also converts into a sleeping area if needed as well. This room has a 4-burner range and an oven. Comes with microwave, full-size refrigerator, and all of our cabinets have special knobs on them to prevent vibration while the train's moving. You have to pull the knob out, and then it opens easily. When it's closed, it's secured. These coaches here will become homes for people on the show. They'll be homes to performers and or staff members. and they'll be their homes for 2 to 4 years for performers, or for staff members it could be for the length of their career. Well, I lived on the Blue Unit Circus train for 10 years, and it's very nice. I mean, even though your accommodations may seem small, in relation to the train, they're actually very big, because a lot of people don't realize that living on the circus train is a lot like living on a ship. You only have so much space to deal with, so we try to think it out and plan and make the accommodations, whether it's for someone who's just hiring off the street or whether it's for the greatest performer on earth. We try to think out the room layout and make it as comfortable as we can for the people that will be living in that room.
When I first came here, I lived in a very small room, but I also lived on a car with about, I guess, 12 other girls. We shared a kitchen, we shared a bathroom. It was like dormitory life, you know, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, they were all my friends. We would have so much fun on the trips. It was, you know, it was a lot of fun. It was like being in college when you're living with a bunch of girls. So it was fun. But then, of course, when you get older and you start doing other things, and my husband and I got married, so we got our own room. And, you know, it was comfortable. You grow with your space.
Mark Gable grew up in the circus. His father was the famed Gunther Gable Williams. Home for Mark has been the circus and the train nearly all his life.
I was born and raised here in the Red Unit of Ringling Brothers. Ever since I was knee high, I was on the train, and I've been on it 30 years now. It's a great place to live. You get a different view every week. You open your window, look out the window, and you get to see a different view, a different city, different people. It's fantastic.
It's the American dream on rails.
If you spend any time at all around the performers, you'll hear a wide range of accents and languages. Many countries are represented in the greatest show on earth.
Life on the train is like a mini United Nations. We've got people from Czechoslovakia and Russia and China and all of the European countries, as well as America and all the different states in America, and everyone gets along just fine together. I wish that the world governments would look to Ringling for some of their political problems.
This is not just a temporary place to store your clown shoes. This is a rolling community, and it doesn't have the fly-by-night feel of some kind of motel on wheels. It's home.
Many people have families that tour with the greatest show on earth. We have our own school teacher that tours with Ringling Brothers, and in a room like this, if this was going to a family, you could conceivably have husband and wife sleeping down in the full-size bed, and one child in the upper bunk and one child in the lower bunk. So this room could conceivably accommodate a family of 4.
The train is home to myself, my wife, all the inhabitants of the train. You forego some of the luxuries of full-size bathtubs, but you have a place that is home, where you have a place to put all your clothing. You're not packing up every 2 days, and at the end of a hard day, you go into bed and you're just home.
One luxury you don't do without is good food, right here in the pie car aboard the train.
I bring them in items that I get out of magazines. Say, can you make this some night? I made them. We made. What'd you make for the last barbecue? It was excellent.
Oh, crab bisque.
Crab bisque. Big old pot, because I'm from New England. I'm a New England boy, and he made a big old pot of crab bisque, and nobody thought it would go. It was the first thing going.
It's a magic, and it has to be in your heart. And he works, and he does his best, and he makes some of the best shepherd's pie, omelets. I can personally attest, the man is personally accountable for at least 15 of my 70 pounds I've put on.
If you've ever dreamed of running away to join the circus, make sure life on the rails is part of that dream. And if your dream comes true, you'll be a member of the family that puts on the greatest show on earth.
The circus operates the red and blue units, which crisscross the United States, all by rail. Collecting trains becomes a lifelong passion for a lot of people. Many times it's an interest that's passed on from one generation to the next. For John Watson, what started as therapy for his son became a strong bond the two still share today.
Look around. Almost everywhere you look is another train. Dave Watson has as many as 10 running at once. and hundreds in his collection. Why so many?
Every train set has some sort of a mystique to me. And if I see one and I want to share in that mystique with it, I'll buy it. Yes, I do have a lot of sets, and I've been collecting for 40 years. So, and I practically have everything in the catalogs that I ever wanted.
Every kid has dreams of special trains. Dave was no different. Growing up in the Midwest, his favorite was a local attraction.
My number one is the Hiawatha. That was a train that I used to watch when I lived in the city of Wauwatosa, come through and stop at the station and then take off. And it was just so dramatic, because you could be standing there 6 feet away from the train. And it was just something that was, well, it was my favorite train. And so I have a lot of Hiawatha memorabilia, and I have some Hiawatha engines, and I go from there.
His love for toy trains has been passed on to his son John, but it didn't start out as a hobby.
When John was in kindergarten, I got a report back from the school saying he was having some difficulty with his small muscle control of his hands and fingers. And I found that very hard to believe, so I said, well, we're going to do some therapy here. I figured if he can learn how to put track together and couple cars and put the cars on the tracks, that would certainly be a real good therapy for him. So I went right out and bought a train. And that's how we started.
All the kids from the school would always be here after school every day playing with the trains. All the mothers from my class would say, is my son there? My mom says, yes.
The motor problems, if there ever were any, went away as fast as his love for trains came on strong. With that came a stronger bond between father and son.
We didn't watch a lot of television when I was younger. When Dad would get home from the office, which would be somewhat late, you know, I'd already have my PJs on, just a little guy, but we'd always spend at least an hour downstairs working on the trains. And I'd go to bed and he'd keep on working on the trains, and I'd get up early in the morning and go down to see what he did.
That was when we used to get boxes of trains from garage sales. Yeah. And they all needed repair and clean up and everything, but that was the fun of it. That's what that's really what got us together on it.
And it was just fun. I enjoyed it. And we both enjoyed it together. So if it wasn't fun, we wouldn't have done it.
Both Dave and John are dentists. John is an innovator just like his father. He designed a critical part of the transformer that's running these trains after noticing how hot the transformer got and how slowly his trains were running.
Originally, the pickup from the coil in the transformer to the rest of the transformer is made through a carbon roller made out of graphite, like a pencil lead. And that thing was cherry red. And, you know, from my knowledge of metals and melting gold at the office, I know cherry red is about 1700 degrees. So right then and there, I thought there's a lot of resistance going there. And the hotter it got, the slower everything would go. And of course, all the energy was going to heat up the roller and not to run the trains. So I thought to myself, what could we substitute for that carbon that wouldn't wear on the soft copper coils, but would be a much better conductor? And of course, being a dentist, I thought, gold. Well, I went to the train show the next weekend and I bought a carbon roller from the supply guy, this parts guy, and I went to the office and made an impression of it. I made some little acrylic patterns and I cast a couple gold rollers up, polished them, and I brought them back and installed them in the transformers, and lo and behold, trains went faster. We could cut back the throttles. They didn't get hot.
As collections go, Dave Watson's is valuable, but it's not dollar signs he sees hanging on his walls.
No. That's strange? I don't. I just see the train that I wanted to have, that I wanted to admire, I wanted to see, I want to be able to hold. And I couldn't tell you right now what dollar I paid for any one of these.
There are some structures, simply because of their sheer size, that are absolutely awe-inspiring at first glance. For rail fans, one such structure is the impressive Hellgate Bridge in New York City. We'll look at this engineering masterpiece in a moment. In 1879, construction was started on the Otago Central Railway on the South Island of New Zealand. It took 42 years to complete the line, which was closed in 1990, but it's back in business with a portion of it resurrected as a tourist line running through the spectacular Taieri Gorge.
You are here in Dunedin on the eastern coast of New Zealand for one of the must-sees this country offers, a train ride through the Taieri Gorge. But you can't help but be stunned by the jumping-off point. Dunedin's railway station is a beacon of Edwardian architecture in this bustling Kiwi city. Complete with Royal Dalton tile floors and splendid stained glass, this fine spot is said to be the most photographed building in the country.
Yeah, we get a lot of business because of this station. You know, it is very historic. The station's got the longest platform in New Zealand. It was done up, built in 1906, and a few years ago the City Council took it over and spent $1 million doing it up.
But it is the ride through the gorge itself that draws visitors from near and far.
The scenery, as most people come on the railway line to go and see the scenery up the gorge. There's no other access other than the railway line.
Sliding through the rugged gorge, you get a unique look at the seemingly endless wonders of New Zealand. This trip isn't long in miles, but the changes you experience bridge quite a scenic distance.
A very narrow river gorge, lots of rocks, and it's a bit of an engineering feat getting the railway line through, lots of big viaducts, 10 tunnels all up on the line, and we climb from sea level right up to the top of the gorge, which is, I think it's about 900 metres.
Along the way you cross a dozen wrought iron and stone viaducts that have stood the test of time. They almost seem part of the natural landscape. It's a world of rocky ledges and sheer drops to pristine waterways. Plunge into darkness as you slip into tunnel after tunnel, 10 in all, and then emerge into the brilliant day once again. Any time of year is worth seeing here in the gorge. The trip changes each time the weather changes, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer. You're carried along in style. It's the perfect spot for afternoon tea inside, or perhaps a local brew with an awesome view outside. The line was built 2 centuries ago when precious cargo was the mainstay of the line.
It was started in about 1879. It was built to tap the gold out of Central Otago for a start off, and by the time it got built, the gold had run out. So it was mainly built to open the countryside up.
The TGR did go through a period when you'd find the cars loaded with passengers of a different breed. They were a bit more wild and woolly, but those days are long gone.
The railways got out of carting sheep in the 1970s. We do cart a bit of wool occasionally in the height of the season, but we're mainly a tourist railway now.
The line is usually loaded with folks who want to look deeper inside New Zealand's rugged countryside. But unlike sheep who used to flock to ride these rails, it took a bit more to get the word out that this was a trip not to be overlooked.
We started off small. Dunedin's not a big city. We've had to do a lot of marketing to get people to come to Dunedin to go on the train, and now it is one of the highlights of visitors to Dunedin.
If you're heading to New Zealand and you're a rail fan, or just enjoy seeing the sights in comfort, put the Taieri Gorge Railway on your list. Some say it's even the best train trip in the country.
I'd be very biased to that answer. Be one of the top 10. Well, there's not that 10 railway lines to go on, but be the top railway journey, yes, definitely. It's a diesel locomotive hauled, DJ class locomotives built in 1968, Mitsubishi locomotives. The carriages are a mixture of vintage carriages built in the 1920s and 3 modern carriages we built in the 1980s, especially for the train.
The Taieri Gorge is a natural wonder. The train that chugs through is a marvel of engineering and ingenuity. Together, they make for a memorable trip.
In New York City, in order to stand out, you've got to be big and impressive. The Hellgate Bridge fits the bill. It carries train traffic over the Hellgate section of the East River, known for its strong current. Before the bridge, if you wanted to get from one side to the other, you faced either an incredibly long roundabout land trip or the cumbersome option of floating your train cars across the water on barges.
The important aspect of this bridge is that it permitted traffic from the south and the southwest to access New England. And prior to the building of the bridge, most traffic was car floated across the harbor, which is expensive and weather dependent. This was the first link between, let's say, Washington and Boston. And it was built just after the building of Penn Station and the tunnels under the Hudson River and the East River, and cut the travel time between Washington and Boston by a good 4 hours.
When it opened in 1917, it was the largest steel arch bridge in the world, 12 stories above the water, spanning nearly 1,000 feet between twin towers. Its sheer size and graceful arch made it an engineering landmark. Designed by Gustav Lindenthal, it cemented his reputation as one of the world's premier bridge builders.
It was designed for extremely heavy loads. It only has 2 tracks on it now, but it was originally designed for 4 railroad tracks and for the later addition of a second deck with a roadway and a streetcar line, which was never built. So it's a very, very heavy, enormous bridge. So from an engineering point of view, it's really quite a marvelous piece of work. Some of the pieces of the bridge weighed as much as 250 tons. And the parts that had to be erected in the arch, some of those I think were as much as 180 tons. It had to be, usually they were lifted off of barges in the river and put in place in the bridge.
In the mid-1970s, when rail service in this region of the country was suffering, Amtrak inherited the bridge. In the 1990s, the dingy dark brown rust color was covered with a vibrant deep red. The granite-faced towers were scrubbed, and the bridge once again started to look like a respectable landmark. Joe Greenstein is a railroad writer and photographer, as well as a New York native, who thinks the Hellgate is as impressive as any New York runway fashion model.
I think that the scope of the bridge is just startling. It's just such a beautiful structure, especially since it's been painted. The red has really brought the bridge alive. One aspect is the view that it gives of the city. Most of the rail approaches into the city just don't give you a sense of what New York is like. The New York Central into Grand Central Station goes through some pretty depressed areas, factories and junkyards and tenements. And the Pennsylvania goes into a tunnel and you hardly get a glimpse of the city at all. But from up on the Hellgate, you get a magnificent view of the skyline. And it really is a gateway. It really gives you a sense of Gotham, of the metropolis that you're approaching. It is most impressive.
Though some freight is carried over the Hellgate, most of the traffic is made up of Amtrak passenger trains. Some use the electrified catenary, which is still in place. Whether looking at the Hellgate from a beautiful park or from the rooftop of a New York residence, it's easy to see why rail fans consider this a masterpiece. It offers visitors a majestic view as their trains come rolling into the Big Apple. And with the growing push for more high-speed rail service here, the glory days of the Hellgate may be yet to come.
Not too long after the Hellgate Bridge opened, the Lionel Model Train Company was so impressed with it, they made a model of the bridge. Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for being with us, and please join us next time for more Tracks Ahead.